All right. Well, welcome everyone to our Brazilian cash market overview. We were talking just before the start of the webinar here that we've done this a couple different times now. I've been a subscriber to Agrinvest's info for, I think right off as soon as I was able to get it, I was signed up for it. And I can't say enough about the information you put out. It's almost one of those where it's so good you don't want to share it. And I feel bad saying that, but it really is probably the most comprehensive information that you will get on what's going on in Brazil's cash market and all of the margins and all of the things that you're seeing when it comes to business and demand and all of that. And I'm not just saying that because they're my guests. I mean, it's kind of one of those things where I have about 3 pieces of information that I religiously read every day, no matter how busy I am. And Agrinvest is one of those pieces. And so I'm really excited to have Eduardo and Neto here, and Carl's here. He's on his way back from school drop off, so he'll be in the office in a minute, but he's here and listening. So super excited to have you guys here. If you want to go ahead and just tell us a little bit, I kind of told the audience a bit about what you do, but if you want to fill everyone in on who you are, what your company is, and what you guys do, that would be great.
Okay, well, I think I may start. My name is Neto. I am one of the shareholders of Agrinvest, just like Eduardo. To tell you a little about Agrinvest, Agrinvest started its activities in 1987. So we are a 37 years old company. It started in the middle of Brazil, in the center west of Brazil, where the soybean as the main acreage, in the state of Mato Grosso do Sul. And today, Agrinvest has almost a team of almost 100 people. And we have operation, we have activities in the physical market, as acting as brokers. And we do over about 11 million tons of soybean, corn, mainly corn, and soybean meal, and some wheat as well. Some DDG in the domestic and in the export market. And that's interesting to mention because that gives us a lot of touch, a lot of feeling of what's going on actually in the farm, in the farm side, in the cash market, what farmers are thinking, farm selling. And then also Agrinvest has a risk management, price risk management sector. We are IBs of brokerage firms from Chicago, banks, and also we are IBs of our local board here to trade corn and currency. So we do work with derivatives and risk management. And then we have the sector of the consulting, which then Eduardo is the head. We have close to 2,000 clients that either sign our app for basic informations, going up in the levels where we have corporate clients that we have calls every week or 2 weeks or so, monthly calls. And then that whole operation is a combination of services that one feeds the other sector, because that's how we come up with precise information, news, because one sector feeds the other. We have a lot of information of the cash market, and then the consulting. We talk to a lot of clients in the whole chain. We talk to farmers. Who are our clients? Farmers, co-ops, local trading companies, international trading companies, soybean crushing plants, ethanol plants, corn ethanol plants, meat processor end users. So we have a whole set of clients that gives us a lot of inputs in order to make, to create all this networking of news. So that's what Agrinvest is. We have an office in the city. Our headquarters is in the city of Curitiba. Curitiba is in the south of Brazil, next to the port of Paranaguá. But then we have 3 offices in the interior of Brazil. And then we have an office in Geneva, in Switzerland, and one in Miami as well for the export market. That's what we do. If Eduardo wants to say something else about Agrinvest.
Okay, good morning for everyone. And the first of all, Angie, many thanks for your feedback. You don't know how it makes me happy and glad to hear about that. And yes, like Neto told us about the Agrinvest, that's the job we do. Put together all this information and try to translate it into some insights about the cash flow from Brazil, Argentina, up to China, for example, and that's our job. So, and I like to do this, and I wake up every day at 4:30 a.m. In Brazil, which is 3 a.m. in the US, so very early to talk with some Chinese contacts and crushers there that we also do some kind of advisement. So that's a very fun job. Well,
I
I
like
think
it.
that's the most important part. It's very fun.
I think so. I agree too. And that's what I like about you guys is your focus is like mine. We're not going to spend a bunch of time hypothesizing on different things. We're going to look at what is going on in the pipeline, what trader sentiment looks like, what's going on around the world and how that's going to influence the pipeline going forward is basically what I really enjoy about the information you put out. And so I'll put a link with the recording when we send this out. But I really appreciate you guys giving the background because I think it's important as we dive into all of these questions to really point out that you're there. You're working with co-ops, you're working with farmers, you're working with these companies around the world. And so you really know what actually is going on at ground level. And so let's start out. Talk to us a little bit about what the current situation in Brazilian agriculture looks like right now. Like obviously here in the US, we're continuing to hear or constantly hearing about, the drop in on-farm income and, the struggles in agriculture. And then we have some folks that look down to South America and think that you guys are just going to continue to expand at a breakneck pace no matter what happens. And so kind of fill us in a little bit, like how has the last year been for farmers and agribusinesses across Brazil? And what does farmer sentiment look like at this point, as we will look ahead to the next marketing year for you guys?
Okay, can I share my screen?
Yes, shouldn't be a problem for you.
Okay, let me see. Okay, so I would like to split in two parts. The weather, the current weather, which is like you guys know, it's not been easy for Brazil. It's very dry, and we have two models, the American model and the European. Both are not so accurate in terms of rains, but European model is being more accurate in terms of rains in the center of Brazil. So the for the next 15 days, this is the most important window we have in Brazil. Uh, because if in a scenario, for example, during October, if Brazil plant in very slow progress in terms of soybean plant, and then we are going to have two impacts, not on soybean. For example, Mato Grosso, 20 years ago, farmers used to plant in November, but now we plant in September. Why? Because the cotton in the west of Mato Grosso, they have to plant a very short uh, life cycle of beans, 95 days, and they have to harvest up to Jan 5th, and then they start cotton planting, and that's their main business because it's cotton in terms of value, revenue, sales are much more important than beans. This is the first impact, and the other is safrinha, the second crop of corn. Farmers are uh, planting earlier soybean because of corn in whole Brazil, from Paraná, which is this state here, up to the north. So that's the impact. If we can't plant during October in a regular or normal speed, and then the corn will suffer. I don't know. I would say it's very unlikely the producers in Brazil, because of that, will reduce the acreage of corn of the next year, because they need cash, and they need cash the next year much more than they need in the last 3 years, because the funding is decreasing in Brazil. And then I'll speak about this later. But as you see here, the European model is it's friendly when you see this the today's update. So we have good rains. For example, they accumulate in 15 days between 20 millimeters up to 50, 100. So Andrew, you can translate the measures. 25, it's 1 inch. So
Mm-hmm.
in yellow, it's 1 inch, and the red, 2. So it's a good amount in 15 days. But this is enough to start planting. Yes, if the in 1 week, for example, next Friday, if the forecast is better or the same of this, and then farmers will get um encouraged to keep planting. That's the deal. Of course, when you go to NASA, for example, NASA website, and then you see the soil moisture, there's no moisture.
Yeah.
But it's not a barrier to not keep planting. If they say the forecast, and the forecast is for the next 15 days, keep showing more rains, then they go. That's the deal.
What is what are your thoughts then on beans as we enter into the growing season? Obviously, the conditions are playing a role, or are causing potentially some worries, or maybe some adjustments possible. But do you think we continue to see an expansion in production in acres? And what are your thoughts on the overall bean crop outlook as we move into the growing season there?
For this season, I think we are working with our estimate is here for the balance sheet of Brazil. So, talking with some seed companies, they see at so far an increase of 500, 600,000 hectares, and then we are going to have this area. The USDA works with 47.3, something like that, so larger. Assuming a not the record of yield, but a good one, and then we are able to reach 166, 67 million tons for the next year. And then the problem is here. We are going to see a small increase in crush, 55.5 million tons, and then a very large export program. That's
Yeah.
the point. If we have 107 million tons of export program, then it means that we are going to ship 35 million tons during September through December.
Of next year, right? Yeah.
And then the US will have a very challenging season in terms of finding demand and compete with Brazil.
Does it seem so, looking at old crop supplies currently in Brazil, would you say well, I mean, it's a silly question to ask. Obviously, availability is tighter because the crop was reduced significantly last year, correct? Um, what does it look like right now for this time period now as we move into October and November, and into December out of Brazil? Is the available supply greater, or do you think that you see Brazil, obviously prices are higher than US, but what does it look like with old crop available supply and farmer selling here over until the new crop starts to move into the pipeline?
It's very small compared to the last year. The answer is this. Let me show the a chart here, and then here is our the comparison between this year and then the last year up to September 25th, and then so you can see we are 3 million tons lower than the last year, and then our estimate is 97. So it's a very small 6-7 million more to sell, available to sell. So we are not a competitor for the US. Of course, we are selling, but at the same level of the US. A little bit of spread because of the quality, because soybean Brazil has a higher oil content than the US, but this is the same comparing to the West Gulf. West Gulf increase and then Brazil goes, and then if US Gulf down and then Brazil will follow. So it's Brazil. It's not a competitor for up to Fab at least, and
So
that's
until
the point.
February, yeah.
If Brazil, mainly Mato Grosso, and then here we can see the Mato Grosso planting progress. And then it's delay, of course. But the point is the critical date is around October 11, October 15. And last year, this is a yellow line. I think we are going to be below the average, which means a very good opportunity for the West to increase the sales. If someone wants a BL, for example, of January or first half of Feb, they will not find in Brazil. They have to move to the West. There's demand, and then depends on the Chinese demand if they will reduce the demand or they will keep the same. And then the West has a good opportunity to increase the sales and extend the sale up to Feb, end of Feb, and then Brazil will get into the game, whatever the crop size is, and then the game is over.
It seemed they were relatively aggressive, and then we'll move on to corn. But my last bean question is: it seems like farmers were relatively aggressive on new crop sales for like February, March, forward. Are you seeing a continuation of that, or has that slowed down? Was that something that they were doing really to just kind of barter or get inputs booked, or was it because of positive margins, or a combination of everything, just to kind of see it somewhat it felt aggressive, at least to see February, March sales early as we did?
And the inputs, most part of that is already purchased,
Okay.
90%. So, but if you make the calculation, how much soybean that represents in terms of volume, it should be 42% farmer selling, and the farmer
Mhm.
selling right now is 21%, so half.
Okay. So not,
So
yeah.
farmers have to sell something or increase the sales if they are not willing to carry this exposure like last year.
Mhm.
And then in Brazil, we have two kinds of producers. One kind of producer is that they buy and sell in real,
Okay.
and the other is like American. They buy and sell in dollar.
Okay.
This guy uh, is waiting for CBOT rally or premium fob to increase the sales.
Mhm.
So of course you have a farmer selling, which is not so big, 21%. but should be larger than that.
Interesting. Interesting. So it's it'll be something. Do you think they've slowed up just based on the drier conditions or poor prices or both?
Sure, sure.
Yeah.
If in 15 days we have good rains, and then we shall see more farmer
Okay.
selling.
Interesting. All right.
And
Let's yeah.
just a point. This is a very important, not for this year, but for the next one. And I will answer the first question. What we can see in Brazil in terms of acreage and production. The point is the funding, and then I think the West farmers will be very interesting to hear that, or very glad. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know, but the funding in Brazil is very tight right now because we have a lot. I think we have a lot of bankruptcy protections into the agriculture in Brazil, mainly Mato
Up
Grosso.
like 70% year over year, right? Is it 68% high? And I mean that's kind
Yeah,
of a it
very,
could
very large, very
yeah.
large. And it's very concentrated. Where is it? In the whole Brazil? No, no. It's in Mato Grosso. Why?
Okay.
Because Mato Grosso has a large state and large farmers. They have to borrow money. uh, a lot of in dollar, mainly $5 million, $10 million. And then with this price decrease, and then because of the COVID, they bought a lot of machines, combines, whatever, at a
Mm-hmm.
very high ticket. And then now the the math doesn't match.
Yeah.
So because of this is the main driver to explain that.
That's
Not
what I
because
saw.
they are bad people.
Yeah.
What? Sorry.
No, no, you're fine. I just what is it? The second largest by asset Brazilian ag retailer was it yesterday that at least as recently filed bankruptcy. And the Bank of Brazil, it looks like is working on what like trying to deter folks from doing it by saying it's not what you should do or what. And so yeah, that was of interest to me. I thought that was interesting. Um,
Yes.
let's look at corn. And you touched on
Uh,
it a little bit. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, just to conclude that here you see this chart, which is
Mm-hmm.
a very important one. This is the funding, where the funding comes when you talk about Mato Grosso. Mato Grosso is the cost of the soybean production last year was 50 billion real, around $8 billion. And in along of the 15 years, this is the picture. They depend a lot of tradings, Cargill, ADM, the big guys. But these big guys, in terms of percentage, so it's around 30%. So this guy is not, uh, they are not willing to increase this share. And then we depend a lot on the distributors, and that's the problem. These bureaus in Brazil, they are not in a good position in terms of funding because they lost money because of these bankruptcy protections from producers. So for 2025-26, I think Mato Grosso will have a very challenging year to keep the same acreage, not increase, but keep the same. Farmers will need more money to funding their own crop, because banks are very aware and very they are not willing to increase the share, and also the trading companies. So they need to have a very good year in terms of production size, soybean and corn, and good prices. If they don't, then I don't know, but I guess for the next crop, 25-26, then maybe we see Brazil decreasing the acres.
Interesting. I think that's an important point, and is one of the things that I brought up a couple different times in my presentations, or at least I do in my marketing presentation, is you guys, Brazilian farmers are as influenced by margin as any, like you're not impervious to poor margins. And so you're not just going to expand even if price tells you not to. The market has to be able to absorb and be able to, you know, basically tell you to be adding acres. And so over the last couple of years, you've been told to go from 150 to 170 or whatever on the bean production side. The market has asked for it. You know, and now the market has kind of slowed that up. We talked a little bit about corn. Obviously, the dryness is what's going to have the biggest influence on safrinha. What are you seeing overall, you know, really when it comes to corn in Brazil? It's not so much what we're looking at for new crop production right now that really matters, though it matters, don't take that the wrong way. But what are we seeing in old crop? The old crop, like, what are you looking at from an overall supply standpoint on the safrinha crop that was harvested this past summer? And what does that mean, you know, as we look ahead for corn exports? Because Brazil's, you know, a year ago, the situation was very different when you looked at Brazil's record corn production and the values at which they were offering bushels into the world pipeline. It was far below what the U.S. was offering or what the U.S. was able to put into the world. Now we're neck and neck for the most part. We're relatively competitive. What has changed in the corn situation, you know, now versus last year, and what are you watching as we move ahead?
Okay. Yes. The point is, it's very different from the US. We have here the logistics to move grains to the ports. Then tradings, they don't have their own logistics, and then they depends on the operators, rail and barges. And then because of that, they have contracts very hard to break. And then because of that, they always have a not good decision to make. Or I buy from corn and beans from producers with a negative margin, or I pay the penalty for the logistics. Which the biggest or the lesser loss I will make. And then because of that, we say this year this year is disaster for the trading companies, because the origination margin was very bad, very ugly for beans and corn. But for corn, the result is this: the our program is much smaller than the last year. As you can see here, 26.5 million tons, about 15 million tons lower, smaller than the last year. And then when you get up to the end of November, 55 last year. So this year, I think we are we're finished our program with 35 million tons. And then the USDA is estimating from October up to end of this September of the next year, 49 million tons. I
Yeah.
think we can't because October, November, December, and Jan of this year is going to be very small, much
Mhm.
smaller than the last year.
I mean, that's a needle mover. Now, obviously, a good portion of last year's demand, how much of last year's, you know, your Ocnov December timeframe, how much of that was Chinese demand? And so if China's absent the market structure here for the last quarter of the calendar year, what do you think that means? Is was it a good, was the majority of what you shipped last year in Q4, was that to China, or did you have some other customers around the world that you think will potentially be looking to other suppliers, whether that's Argentina, whether it's the US, Ukraine? I think we can talk about is kind of out of the picture here. It seems like in the short term. But you know, how much of that was Chinese demand, and how much do you worry about a lack of China demand when it comes to corn? Will that help to offset a good portion of this reduction in exports, do you think? Or, you know, what are your thoughts when it comes to China in the corn market overall?
The next year from this 55 million tons, China represent a third, 15 million tons. So
So really not as
China,
much as what I was thinking. I mean, it's a lot. A third is a significant amount, but it's still out of the 50. Go ahead. Sorry, I'll stop.
Yeah, the point is, it was nothing, and then 15. So
Yeah,
a
yeah.
large. Yeah, and what's the difference for the price? China, they in terms of demand and they pull out the demand and prices. So market follows the price China is paying for. So this year, no reference. So
Hmm.
because of that, other buyers are much more, um, they are not concerned about the
Right.
price. And then the next year, the OND 20 October, November, December, and Jan, 25 million tons, which China represent at least half of that. So
Okay,
in
yeah.
the end of the window, China and became more aggressive. So we have no China demand now, and I don't think so. We're going to see anything from China this year, and because of that, I think this 25 will be 20 with luck, or 18.
Interesting. Let's talk then about domestic demand. And so domestic demand, obviously, you guys have a growing livestock industry, right? Your margins have been decent on the livestock side. But I really want to talk about the fuels of the future bill that you guys just had passed. And get your thoughts on it. Is it a needle mover? Is it something that matters? Obviously, just to kind of, I'll give my little spiel of what it is, and then you can correct me or add detail to it. But basically, the both chambers of your government, or both parts of your government there, have determined that they want to increase your ethanol blending, your biodiesel blending. I mean, it feels like for us the renewable fuels standard, but now it's renewable fuels 2.0, and really looking to bolster some domestic demand for you guys from the looks of it. Can you go ahead and kind of summarize what it is, and what does that mean in your opinion for domestic demand in the country?
Oh yes, they call the fuel of the future, which is we have a different kind of fuels are being tested in Brazil, but the point is the mixture. For biodiesel, Brazil will increase 1 point for per year up to 20. Now it's 14%. The next year, from March onward, will be 15, and then up to 20. For each point of mixture increase, and then we have more 600, 700,000 tons of oil, soybean oil only. Different from the US, in the feedstock, matrix, Brazil, the soybean represent 80%. So it's very large. And because of that, we have good margins. Without that, we are going to see the same scenario of Argentina, for example, which is running with a negative crushing
Mm-hmm.
margin. So 80% of the oil that Brazil is producing right now is flowing to the domestic market for this biodiesel program. And then about the ethanol, for sure, we are going to see increase, but depends on the ratio.
Mm-hmm.
Because when the ethanol have a 30% of discount compared to gasoline, and then the consumer, they will go there and fill the tank. Depends on the price, but it's
Mm-hmm.
going to help for sure to keep increasing the number of plants of ethanol corn in Brazil, and this is changing the replacement cost of Brazilian corn for higher, which is
Mm-hmm.
good for the US.
Yeah.
So for being a exporter in Brazil, and it's a just the Brazil is unique in terms of keeping flowing grains through the ports, and the return of the assets you have. So because you start in Jan and finish in December, so you have the whole year moving grains. But it's not easy because corn is much higher than the export parity. And then for exporter, I think they will increase the soybean program, and then for the next year, and then they will decrease corn. That's the consequence in the end.
Interesting. Do you think it impacts exports, or does it just stimulate production? Like, I mean, obviously, potentially in the short term, it cuts into your exportable surplus, or could, like you said, because your exporters are struggling. Do you think eventually it just helps to encourage additional production, or do you think it doesn't really need to?
No, because the proportion is too different.
Mm-hmm.
We are going to crush, for example, beans,
Mm-hmm.
because when you think about corn, and then we have to think about soybean. If soybean increase in terms of acres, and then the second crop goes following this increase, we have every year we have
Interesting.
always have this double. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so it's the same thing. Uh, and then the crush volume will be 55.5 million tons. So it's not a big increase. Of
Okay.
course, for oil, this is much less oil we have to export. For oil, is good in terms of supply, uh,
Yeah.
global supply.
Last question on this. Does the sharp rise in sugar prices, do you think you'll see a change? Like, how do the ethanol plants work? And perhaps this is a very stupid question, but you're not going to be able to see a change in feedstock in plants. Or will you see a reduction in sugar ethanol production and potentially more in the way of ethanol imported, or any changes that you could see because of the rise in sugar prices and the worries over potential shortages in sugar going forward?
Yeah, the sugarcane acreage is very stable,
Okay.
because they depends on the this acreage is the sugarcane goes very well in uh, uh, bad soils. So then the sugarcane is losing acreage to soybean, and then now we can see the invert, because of the lower profitability of soybean, and then maybe some farmers will rent their land to sugarcane plants. So the we can see the opposite. We
Interesting.
have seen this in 15 years ago in 2006-7 because of the lower profitability in some in the interior of Brazil. In 2007-8, after the subprime crisis, and then we may see sugarcane acreage increasing on over the soybean.
Interesting. Okay. So let's talk next subject that I think is one of those where we still have a lot of uncertainty surrounding it, but it does have the potential, in my opinion, to really reshape trade flows potentially, at least in the short term. And that is the Europeans deregulation. Um, so a little bit about it, and I know you had said ahead of time, like, it is controversial. There are some real heated opinions on both sides, and there's a belief that we see it get pushed back. I think there was a rumor that worked its way around that the EU is looking at different ways, researching different ways that maybe they can partially postpone or delay some of the implementation, whereas others are saying no, it's an EU ruling and they have to have all 27 member states agree to delay if they're going to, and et cetera, et cetera. So there's just a lot of unknowns surrounding these new deforestation regulations that we're seeing come into effect at the end of the calendar year. But what are your thoughts on the EUDR, and do you think that that will impact Brazilian exports or the Brazil market overall?
Mhm. Neto will answer that. He's a very expert on this politics.
Very expert on that. Okay. I also sit on the board of directors of a crushing plant in the interior of Brazil. It's a large soybean crushing plant. I'm in their board of directors for the last 11 years. And we then, with the company there, we have been ahead of most of the Brazilian crushing plants. we took the initiative of gathering all the requirements and getting prepared to start to be able to have that license or that permit or that documentation starting in January, right? But as far as I'm concerned, only us, ourselves, Grupo Cereal, and two other crushing plants in Brazil are doing what we're doing. So that tells, how the market is feeling about it, I think that the large guys, the large farmers, the large crushing plants, they will be able to set this up. But the mid-size and the small-size farmers definitely will have a very hard time on that. I really doubt that in the next, let's say, 3 years, they will be able to get prepared to do it. There are a lot of new companies that are not a lot, but some new companies that are already providing services to help farmers to track their production, to show that the soybean don't come from deforestation areas. But it's tough. It's something new. It's tough. A lot of people is not willing to do it. They're most saying, hey, let's see what will happen if really something it starts to pay me a premium for that, then I'm willing to do it. It all turns into money. Okay, if it's just going to add cost, they're not going to do it. If they're going to say, no, but we will pay, I don't know, 30 cents per bushel extra, okay, then they're going to start to do it. But then it's kind of tricky because that code, the URDR code, they say that no soybean can come from an area that had forest since 2020. But our environmental code, it's very strict. It's one of the strictest in the world. We do allow farmers to open acreage in forestry areas if they follow the percentage of the soil that can turn into crops. But that so that has it doesn't have an agreement with that European requirement, because then the farmer here, they will follow the rule, but then under the eyes of the European Union, we are not. Okay. And then if for soybeans, if we consider that only 14% of the soybeans was exported to Europe last year, it's not that big of a market, so far. Of course, then we can think, okay, European Union was the first one, later can come, Japan or other countries, and then, okay, then things will start. But I would say that for the next 2 years, I don't think that will make a big change at all. I don't think, at least for the next 2 years. I don't think so, because there are other markets, there can be some adjustments in the market. Okay, European Union doesn't buy it from Brazil, but buy from somewhere else, but then that go to somewhere else. I mean, that'll be so far until other countries don't join the same type of initiative. I don't think that's going to create a big deal. They are talking about, for the crushing plant, paying around $15 per ton of extra premium.
Okay. So that's something. I mean, I was going to say 30, 40 cents a bushel, right? 40, give or take. Yeah.
Yep. So for the soybean meal, right? For the crushing plants.
Okay.
And also, Cargill is in the front of this initiative. They're going to have a special terminal in Santos just for that.
Interesting.
So Cargill is the leader in this attitude, and together with this other crushing plants that they have this soybean meal origination program. So things are happening in Brazil, but I don't think that's going to be a game changer. No, I don't think so. For the next 2 or 3 years, I really doubt that's something that will have a major impact.
It'll just be those trying to source supplies in the EU that will struggle potentially the
Yes.
most, right? As they have to, they're going to have to rework some trade relationships that they may not have had to in the past. You know, and work to source those 14% of beans if Brazil is, and I think you're right. We're seeing it here where Louis Dreyfus has started the program. ADM's offering a premium too, but only out of their Toledo facility so far. You know, and the paper collection, the data collection. To me, it doesn't feel that different, but I also spent time with a non-GMO, like a food grade bean program. And we've done some stuff with different types of specialty wheat as well. And so it really doesn't feel like you're jumping through major hoops, but the thing that's been most perplexing to me is how long everyone's waited to start putting together the proper protocol or certification to meet it's almost funny because it's such a common thing in physical grain to wait 2 months before it's supposed to kick in to be like, oh, that's due.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting to see it, for sure. Any additional thoughts on it at all, or just kind of something where in the short term you guys will look to move beans elsewhere and we'll see some trade flows adjust? The biggest concern then seems to be if we see
Well,
the desire spread.
yeah, I just as a comment, you know, like we're talking about then soybeans, right? I mean, coffee may have an impact on that because 50% of the Brazilian coffee goes to Europe. Okay. So the coffee people are
That's one, yeah.
you know, yeah. But of course, coffee is kind of easier, you know, to track that. But it's worth it to mention just to give an idea of how complicated this can be. Okay, it's
Wait,
easy to track it, but you know, as far as this regulation, a lot of new coffee acreage comes from deforestation area as far as their
interesting. Yeah, because I think I'd read over 30% of Brazil's exports overall will be impacted by it, and I wasn't sure where beans fit into that. So it's interesting to hear the 14%. Well, we're into our last act, the last little bit of conversation that we have for the day, and then I will set you guys free to enjoy your Friday. But do you have anything, like, is there anything catching your eye that you think is going to impact Brazilian agriculture, that could have an influence in the overall world dynamics of the market? Anything that you're really paying attention to locally, and then anything else that you're paying attention to big picture that you think some folks may be missing? So it's kind of a two-part question, but we'll start first with the Brazilian agriculture situation. You know, is there anything there that's happening in your opinion locally that folks may not be paying attention to that could be an influential factor in the market structure here as we move forward?
First of all, this is thing of the funding. The other is our currency for sure. It's been very, you know, the oscillation is very hard and depends on the our government. With it's a leftist government and they love to spend more than they earn. So this is a problem that we have to deal with next year. And then of course the if our currency goes down for the next year, and then this is going to help farmers in Brazil for sure. Will increase the capacity for keeping a game. So we have this drought, and then the FX, and then the Chinese demand, and this push that they are doing to try to reflation the economy. So putting together, I think it's a very complex and very fun
Right.
to come for sure.
This is why we're friends, Eduardo. I feel the same way. I'm just like, do you not see everything that's going on around the world right now? Like, you can't. There's always something to be talking about. It's terrible and awesome all at the same time.
What I
Worldwide.
want
Yeah, go ahead, Neto. Yeah.
okay. What I just want to say is that, you know, I know that in the US, in other countries, people, they count on Brazil to be increasing acreage year by year. And I say that one year or eventually, maybe soon, Brazil will surprise the world, you know, that we it's the comment that you made, you know, there is an acreage expansion only if the profit is there, you know.
Yes.
And if there isn't profit, you know, if it is at a loss, you know, we'll see even an acreage decrease. Okay, we still have a lot of acreage to expand, but the cost to turn, you know, pasture or, you know, or other type of land into a crop production has become very high lately, you know. So we have seen, you know, this big spike in the acreage in Brazil, but that doesn't mean that we will keep increasing. You know, that's why it's very important to monitor Brazil year after year, because
Yes.
we can, let's say, surprise the world one day, you know. And now, as Eduardo said, the funding, you know, the environment is very bad in Brazil because all these people filing Chapter 11, farmers filing Chapter 11, and judges that don't understand the business, the agribusiness. They just approved Chapter 11 because farmers didn't sell it when prices were high, and then prices went down, and they claim that, you know, discrepancy of forces with trading companies, and then also these dealers, these distributors filing Chapter 11. The environment is very bad, and you know, we have to understand that in Brazil, who funded, you know, were trading companies, distributors, dealer co-ops, and now, you know, the trustful level, it's very low in Brazil, you know, so that can create a big impact on the years to come.
I just have to hit the unmute button about 7 times to make it work this go around. But I do think that's a super, I don't think we can reiterate enough what you said when it comes to paying attention to what's going on in Brazil year after year. I think so many folks have just kind of resigned themselves with this idea that we're going to see, you know, it was very quick. It was 125 million metric ton of soybeans, and then it was 152, and then it was 172 projected that ended at 165 or wherever, you know, depending on what. But you had this massive leap in growth of production. And a lot of folks believe that you're going to continue to see that. And in reality, right now, the economics and everything else say no. And so I think that is something that is very important to pay attention to and recognize that, you know, folks down there are looking at margins and making economic decisions just the same as we are up here. So any other things that you would like to share? Anything else that you would want to share with the group before we call it a day and let everyone go on with their Fridays? I can't reiterate enough how much I appreciate your guys' time.
Don't forget the Chinese will be out for 12 days, almost 2 weeks. So,
Oh yeah,
so
that's gonna be
it will be
boring.
very slow.
It will be. I'd forgotten about that. Maybe I should start timing my vacation for when they're gone, because it feels like we just
Yeah,
don't
I'm
do
thinking about you
anything.
to take some days. Yeah,
Right? Yeah, that's just it. But no, like I said before, I really appreciate you guys taking the time out to join us and fill us in on the things that you're seeing and what you're watching. And I definitely cannot reiterate enough watching this. The top level of information that you put out, and I'm not just saying that because you're here, like it is honestly the most comprehensive analysis and what's going on in Brazil's cash markets, Brazil's macroeconomic situation. You know, you've got an Argentina twist in there. You pay attention to what's going on in Paraguay and Uruguay, and just the whole entire inner workings of the cash market. And, you know, I cannot say enough about how important it is to watch what is going on with the pipeline and with the cash markets around the world. And with as important as Brazil and their neighbors, its neighbors have become to the world market and the direction that we head from a future standpoint, you have to be able to take in as much information as possible about what's going on down there. And you guys provide that. It's awesome. Like I said, it's hard for me to say that because I feel like I have like this secret weapon. Like, how do you guys not know what's going on in Brazil? Do you not subscribe to Agrinvest? Like it's easy. You know, but so but I do have to share because it is great stuff, and I do appreciate your time. And what I'll do is include a link to your website when I send the recording out. And so if anyone wants to subscribe, they'll be able to get taken care of by your group. And yeah, there's a slew of options. You can choose monthly, quarterly, yearly. You can just do whatever you want to sign up. So
Yeah, for
anything you
free.
guys
Have...
anything you guys want to add? You didn't pay me for that either. It's just it is
Yeah,
good
yeah,
stuff. But
yeah.
anything you
Nice.
want to add
Thank
before
you very
we
much.
call it a day?
Well,
Anything
if
Sorry.
you
else? I'm good.
guys, whenever if you guys feel like coming down to Brazil to have a technical visit at the farms to see what Brazil looks like, you let us know. We can create a group and send you to
Oh, I'd love that. Yeah.
also and to others, because a lot of people has curiosity to see, you know, these big fields and what farmers are thinking or considering. So a couple of days here, I think that is very interesting. So if you have people that are interested, you know, let us know.
I will do that. I love it. I thank you guys, and I thank everyone for attending. If any of you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out, and we'll be back again with some more information as it kind of is needed. So have a good one, everyone.
Okay, thank you. Have a good
Thank
Friday.
Thank
you.
you, guys. Bye bye. See you.
Bye.
Bye.